Portland. Happy Climate Week. Thank you so much for coming out to spend some time to dive into the subject of women in the climate revolution. I am Mica Miro. I am the engagement director with Green Empowerment. I also had the immense privilege to be a producer on this film, so I'm very excited to share it with you both professionally and personally. So with that, we're going to roll the film. I always love watching this film with an audience and hearing the moments of reaction, the moments of group reaction. It's so satisfying. And I love witnessing Lorena's journey and growth, and also Joanne. I've actually met both of these women, and I can tell you Joanne is just as radiant in person as she is on film, and Lorena is just as direct and confident as she is in this film. Something I really love to share with audiences is these women are incredible women. You see that through this film. And we meet incredible women like them, incredible community leaders like them in every community that we work with. And that is really what makes Green Empowerment's program work, our projects work, that there are incredible leaders in all communities around the globe who are ready to do this kind of work to organize their communities. When we started out to make this film, we were really looking at water access. Let's tell a story of water access. And as you saw, that turns into a story about climate. It turns into a story about women's leadership because these things are really intrinsically intertwined. So that's the conversation we're here to continue tonight. And I have three really incredible women here with me on stage to have that conversation. I'm going to take a moment to introduce them and then we'll jump in. So to my right here is Sara Fuentes from Women in Cleantech and Sustainability. She is both the chairperson of WCS and she runs her own business called SmartWaste, Inc. She brings 10 years of experience managing trash and recycling programs in the Bay Area. She is a powerhouse, you guys. I'm so excited to have her on stage with us. Welcome, Sara. Camila Thorndike is with us tonight. Woo! Camila is a Climate Action Program Officer with the Lemelson Foundation. She's also bringing to the stage 20 years of experience as an organizer and campaigner in climate. Just a few of her very impressive credits include leading environmental mobilization for the Harris-Walz campaign, serving as a legislative assistant to Senator Bernie Sanders, directing the campaign that passed a nation-leading 100% renewable energy standard in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Camila. And finally, Anita Ramachandran is with us. Maybe a lot of you know Anita. I've had the pleasure of seeing her on panels here with GlobalPDX. And we're so honored to have us. She is the CEO of MicroMentor. And that is the world's leading online platform for mentorship in small businesses and for business owners. Under her leadership, the platform has gone from 5,000 entrepreneurs on the platform to 400,000. Very impressive. She also brings about 20 years of experience in nonprofits, tech, and community organizing. And she's really known for her grounded and trust-based leadership. So welcome, Anita. So the first thing I want to do is just give us all a chance to talk a little bit more about your organizations and about where you see women leading in climate now. And I'm actually going to pass the stage over to Anita first. I'm hoping that you can share a bit with us about MicroMentor, more about what MicroMentor does, and also where you're seeing women around the globe stepping into climate leadership and stepping into work around climate.
Thank you, Mica. And what an inspiring film this was. And I think it was, it just gave me a lot to think about. And certainly the elements that I saw in this film resonated with what we see around the world with the micro entrepreneurs that we support through MicroMentor's global platform. It's a global platform that connects entrepreneurs around the world with access to business mentorship through a community of volunteer mentors. Our community spans around 180 countries, and we see entrepreneurs, particularly women entrepreneurs who have scarcity of access to resources, knowledge, networks, skills, being able to connect with mentors and sort of cross that valley of death with their businesses, overcome challenges with having access, democratized access to social capital. And what we've seen through the years, and particularly in the last 2 years when we've dived deep into climate resilience work with our micro-entrepreneurial community, is that several of the women on the MicroMentor community are doing climate resilience work. Either they're upcycling, working in the food value chain, using sustainable products, but they don't name themselves as working in the green business, so that it doesn't mean that there isn't impact, but they're not being seen. They don't have access to the resources, they're not accessing finance that's available for green businesses, and the linkages are broken for women entrepreneurs around the world. So we've been working on growing our platform of services to include climate resilience training and give them specific access to local country-based knowledge around access to climate finance. So that's just sort of a part of what MicroMentor does, in addition to being a global mentorship platform. And watching this film certainly is inspiring me to see what more we can do and how we can go deeper at the community level. So thank you for having me.
Great, thank you. I'll pass it to Sara now to share, and then to Camila to share a bit more about your organization and where you're seeing women lead right now in your business or your sector.
So, hey everyone, thank you so much for being here. This is an amazing event. So Women in Cleantech and Sustainability is a nonprofit organization that was founded in San Francisco just about 14, 15 years ago. And the founder, Lisa Ann Pinkerton, started because, quite frankly, she was tired of being in a room full of manels. And there was always these panels full of men. No offense for our man ambassadors in the room. Thank you for being here. We love you. But quite frankly, that we saw that there was a big gap. And at Women in Cleantech and Sustainability, we have a couple objections, and I get really fired up about them, so just bear with me here. So one of the first things is to help women achieve gender parity. Now, how many women in the room would like to see that happen right now in the room? That's what I'm talking about. The other thing is that we are looking for thought leaders, and I do believe that I'm in a room full of thought leaders, so if you are one of them, please make sure you come say hello to me and connect with me on LinkedIn. The other thing that we are really radical about is action. I'm a doer, I'm not a talker. I do talk a lot, but I'm more of a doer than a talker. And so one thing that we do at Women in Cleantech and Sustainability is we want climate action. We want women that are doers and movers and shakers, but also that don't take no for an answer. So I think we're in a room full of women like that and men, so thank you for being here. We also do support women through their careers, through mentorship programs, career development. We started in San Francisco, and because of COVID, we transitioned virtual. Then we became this international organization where we have members now internationally in over 36 countries and all throughout the United States. We're growing our chapter based in LA, New York, and hopefully now in Pacific Northwest. So we are actively looking for champion leaders that want to build a community focused on some of those objections that I meant, those things that I just mentioned. What I see women working in climate, so many facets, just because Women in Cleantech and Sustainability is so broad. So I'm biased to the waste and recycling industry. If you ever want to talk trash, you make sure you call me. One thing that I really love to do is I do like to talk about the beginning and end of life of materials. I do see a lot of women making big moves in the materials space. Many of us have heard of Sway. Many of us have heard of the circular economy, and many of us like money. So since we all like those kinds of things, for me, I'm a little biased about the clean tech space just because I like waste technologies. I like to see how we can aggregate information, present it to decision makers, and then provide them immediate solutions in their own ecosystem with their own material. I think it's kind of fascinating. The other things that I see are entrepreneurs. I see the birth of entrepreneurship in women. I see that some of the most amazing entrepreneurs are women. No offense, once again, to the male ambassadors that are in the room, but quite frankly, we saw in this video how tenacious women are. How not only are there our moms, sisters, aunties, but they take on those characteristics of moms, sisters, aunties at their companies, and you can't help but want to listen to them and follow them, right? So that, to me, I see that characteristic kind of coming out now. And the thing about women in clean tech and sustainability is that we've been building a diverse network before it was popular, right? And then when it became popular during a particular administration, it was totally okay. And then now we're canceled. And so, but we're still going to continue to promote diversity within the clean tech space. And so for me, being in a community and being around women that are willing to stand together, that to me is pretty intense. And at the same time, it gives me hope. So I think seeing women like that are in entrepreneurship, willing to make a change, willing to kind of, whether is standalone, but are we really alone when we have supporters like this in the room? No, I don't think we are, right? So that's just a little bit about women in clean tech and sustainability. And I think that with the thought leadership in the room, I do believe that we're going to see some more amazing things come out of this region and Pacific Northwest, to be exact, and in Portland. So thank you for letting me plug that, everybody.
All right, hard to follow. Hey everyone, my name is Camila Thorndike, and I'm actually quite new at the Lemelson Foundation. I'm a few months in. I'm very glad to be back in Oregon, my home state, after about 8 years in DC. And a bit about the Lemelson Foundation. It's actually a pivot from my career in organizing and politics, but an organization I'm really proud to be part of, founded in 1992 to use the power of innovation and invention to improve lives around the world by strengthening economies and helping entrepreneurs. And in 2023, the foundation started a climate action fund that's dedicated money through first kind of climate startup tech accelerator focused approach, and now bringing on a political radical like myself, we're going to get down to movement building and shifting the dynamics that create governance conditions that are amenable to clean tech entrepreneurship or not, as we're seeing right now with the overturning of the Inflation Reduction Act, which was the biggest climate law ever passed in the world. And the Trump administration is in the single act of passing their recent budget bill earlier this month, overturning more than a third of the progress that we've made on climate in the last 20 years. And I could go on about that, but what we're trying to do is really level the playing field for women in climate tech. Only actually less than 3% of venture capital goes to women. Less than 3%. That is crazy because actually women under promise and over deliver. And what we see is that if you put more women in charge as on boards of directors for companies, in charge of their own firms, not only do environmental metrics go up, but so does profit. And so it's a kind of no-lose scenario, but part of the problem here is that only 17% of partners in venture capital firms are women. So what we're trying to do at the foundation is directly support organizations that are providing wraparound services for climate and clean tech innovators. 15 of our 26 climate grantees are women-led or women-founded. And just a few examples of this. So these are some cool organizations you can learn about. Here in the US, Elemental Accelerator is particularly good at providing those wraparound services. Women led and founded. Here in the Pacific Northwest, Virtue Lab, led by Ina Abiodun. I might be butchering her last name. She's incredibly inspiring example of courage and innovation. She's right here helping Cleantech incubators work in our region. In Brazil, Quintessa is a startup accelerator doing helping startups like waste management, forest fire detection, turning waste products from cocoa production into cosmetics. And in India, together with Prime Coalition, which is also women-led, we're supporting organizations like Green Artha. And the last plug I'll make is that there are incredible women leaders within the Lemelson Foundation, one of whom I think is here today. Maggie Flanagan leads our work in emerging markets around the world. She's been with the foundation for 7 years, and I learn every day from her. Cindy Cooper started Engineering for One Planet to embed sustainability ethics and how-to in engineering training for the next generation of engineers to just think about this stuff as a no-brainer. And Katie Crumick on our education team is making sure that career and technical education in Oregon and elsewhere also has a climate pathway embedded in programs. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Women under promise and over deliver. I love that. I relate to that. That actually segues us really nicely into the next topic I wanted to bring, which is kind of the broad question of why women? Why are we here talking about why we need women in leadership positions in climate? And there's a lot of reasons behind that. I think if we think to the film, you see really clearly at the beginning that the burden of carrying water and using water in the home, washing dishes, cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, really around the globe falls incredibly disproportionately on women. In fact, I have a stat here. Every day, collectively, women spend 200 million hours carrying water around the globe. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of human capital going to carrying water. And it's mostly women and children doing that work. So it really makes sense that in creating the solutions to that work, that women would be in the forefront of the committees, being part of the solution, figuring out what is our community level solution. Like you said, right? It's the people who are going to be using the resources need to be part of the solution. So that's one reason why women. We need them in the solution making arena. We need them in leadership so that they can help solve the problems that are affecting them most. We also see at Green Empowerment that when there are women on the water committee, there's much more trust in the system. People really trust women to be in leadership within their communities. So I want to throw that question to the panelists. What are your whys? And I thought we'd start with Camila on this one. And I wanted to really, I know that you could draw on your political experience for this one. You mentioned in our little prep call and our pre-call some stats in the gender divide, both in women voting on climate issues and women policymakers. So if you could share with us, I'd love to share that with the group.
Sure, yeah. So there is a staggering gap between men and women in terms of how they prioritize climate as an issue to vote on. Overall, this was not a climate election. 70% of voters did not rank climate change in their top 10 issues. And you could say, yes, this was about inflation. This was also about disinformation about inflation and about everything else. But as we've seen recently, there's a report out from the Environmental Voters Project this April, and they show a 25-point gap between men and women. So 62% of climate voters are women, 37% are men, and young women are more than twice as likely to list climate as their top priority than young men. This is part of a rightward shift for young men, not only in the US, but in Western democracies and countries around the world, tied to all sorts of things we can get into, but disillusionment in the system as a primary driver. And yet young women are continuing to lead the charge. And we're also trying to solve for how to bring men back into the fold. And sometimes that might be how we talk about it. What is a climate voter? Well, the fact is that most clean energy jobs are still held by white men. Only 30% of those jobs are held by women. And so what a better world we could have had, right, if we'd embraced women's leadership, especially in this last election. And I think going forward, we really need to figure out how to close this gap. And for that, I'm particularly encouraged by the next generation in my household, our girls, teens, and tweens. We have Hazel and Ellie here tonight who are very active and having these conversations with their friends. So yeah, ladies. With that.
Great. Anita or Sarah, do you want to take it from there?
So you brought up some really good points, and I want to say you had asked a question about why women, and it makes me think about my ancestors and my family, as well as just in general. We're kind of in this patriarchy, and when I talk about patriarchy, it doesn't mean that automatically I'm going to start talking about like feminism, because obviously some of the guys in the room might be like, oh, you know, we're man haters. But when I think about women, I think about how we are in terms of loving, and I think about healing, and I think about the planet. And I think about how us as women, we're creators and we have the ability to create life. And so it makes me think about how we as women are able to create things in general, and we have the power to create things. And so I feel like us as women, we have the ability to bring healing in a way, and it's very unique because of our ability to create life. And this is something that's really unique to us. And I don't care if other people don't like it, because we have the power to create life. So if that means that we can create life, we can also destroy life. And I also, in that thought process, because many men know that women will destroy you, I think about our passion and our desire for our family. And we look at things substantially different when it comes to providing for our family, not just the physical things, but also the longevity of things. And we don't just think about here and now, we think about long term. And so I think when I think about women, how, you know, the women in the video, how they're thinking about not just right now to provide water for their family, but they were thinking about the long term of their communities. And us as women, when we're thinking about what we're creating, we're thinking about the long term of whatever it is that we're creating. Those of us that have birthed a child and maybe almost died, we understand the sacrifice that it takes to bring that life into the world. And so why women? Well, because we almost die to give birth, and we can prevail and be resilient to death. Where men, when they get sick, they're babies. And so we have a different type of strength, and quite frankly. And I'm not saying that we're stronger than men physically, but I'm saying the resilience that we have to endure. And as you mentioned about how many pounds of water or gallons of water, that should show proof that we can endure to provide and sacrifice. And that's something that's really unique, I think, to us and for us. So that's why, just because we get to.
Love it. You took it to the source. You took it to the source.
Well, I think my fellow panelists have shared most of the things that I would have said around how important it is to design for women, with women, and to center them in any of these sort of complex situations, because it's not because it's not just that it's an equity issue. I think it's because their lived experience of women really informs decisions very powerfully. I think those designs lift all boats. So when you design for women, it raises all boats. It really does look at edge cases, because their needs are often left out of the solution set. So designing for women, I think, puts everybody at an advantage. And I think that's one of the things that add is that it means, climate change affects women disproportionately, as we saw in the video. And it's economic, but it's also a root cause of a lot of gender-based violence. Women experience extreme violence at home or in the workplace or in their communities when situations get exacerbated because of climate change, whether access to water or food is limited. Everybody, there's a lot of stress in the community, and women tend to bear the brunt of that stress with violence showing up at home and in other places. So the cost of overlooking or neglecting to center women in the solution has a much greater price. And as we know, I think when we see trauma follows, and it goes on with generations. It follows with sons and daughters. And so when we're able to empower and center women, we really are making the community stronger, both men and women, boys and girls, and all people in the community benefit when their situation is being put at the center. And I'll just say that it's I think, Camila, you gave the stats around how disproportionate access to finance tends to be in philanthropy or in venture capital. And this thing is, it's, when we say those numbers, it just feels like, oh my God, women are being left out. And yes, of course, they're being left out of this equation, but it's not just a missed opportunity. It's a real critical gap in our climate response. We will not, and we just cannot create a robust climate solution if we're not thinking about how to bring about more parity for women in this equation. So that's what I'll add at the center of this. This why women. I mean, I have a lot more to say about that, but we'll save that.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing it back to, that women need to be part of the solution, that they really will. Addressing women and bringing their voices will bring us all up. It's not just about women looking at women. It really raises everybody up. I love that. And hearing you speak about kind of the innate qualities of women, it's reminding me of Joanne, who I believe has 8 children. I might have the number wrong, but she has many children of her own in the film. And she is also a retired school teacher. And I just, my mother, who's here tonight, is also a school teacher, retired school teacher. And I just, meeting her, I thought, yeah, this is like a school teacher in her fully formed, like fully evolutionized version, right? Like she's now the teacher for the entire 5,000 person community. Everyone is looking up to her. And she really, from those years and years of working with the community, knows so many people, has so many connections. And it's kind of taking this very feminine occupation, her role as a mother, and elevating it into the realm of leadership and elected positions. And I wanted to tell a story, a kind of behind the scenes story about when we see Joanne get elected in the film. We knew that election was happening. They had planned it for about 10 o'clock in the morning, so we sent the film crew out to film it. And when they got there were a bunch of men there to vote, but there were almost no women. And so our partner, the Water Trust, started asking around like, okay, why didn't any women show up? What's going on? And it turns out that that's the time that women do housework there. That this was the time that they were doing their chores, and that's when they had things that they were doing. And so luckily there was a pause, and they didn't just go ahead with the election. They thought, okay, well, we're not gonna hold the election with only men. So they went door to door, they asked people, they set it for later that afternoon, they just postponed a few hours, and then we get the election that you saw on film. Lots more representation. And it brings me to thinking about the structural changes that are needed to bring more women into this work, right? I think this is something we're very, very weak on in the United States. We want women leading companies. We want women to step into their full political power, but also there is no universal childcare. How are women gonna do that? How are women gonna fully step out of the house without these other supports? So I wanted to bring the question to the group of what structural changes do you see that we really need to make this this vision of more women leaders a reality. And as the chairperson of Women in Cleantech and Sustainability, I want to pass it to you first, Sara. Where are you seeing programs and structural change really work, and where are we faltering?
So at SmartWaste, one of my goals is to have a 4-day work week. And partly because I like to have fun. So for me, I think about providing flexibility and the ability to have autonomy. So at Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability, we employ contractors globally. And that's one of our ambitions, is to continue to employ people where they are. So I think that having flexibility for women to work is critical, because I'm also a caregiver of somebody that's 60 years old, right? And so if I didn't have that flexibility, I would not be able to be a caregiver as well as take care of my son. But I have 24 hours in the day. I can wake up at 5 o'clock. So having the flexibility for women is critical, right? To think that we can't get things done or we have to only get things done from 8 to 5 is kind of limiting. So I think that's one of the first things. The other thing that I see is definitely, I see a transition with male counterparts supporting and staying at home, and flipping I say gender norms. I was privileged to have a father that stayed at home and took care of all 4 kids. And he was Mr. Mom. I don't know if you guys remember that. So I do see role reverses and changes within culture, but I definitely think flexibility is really, really important, and being willing to meet people where they're at. And also, I think another thing too is definitely compensation, making sure that I like to pay more than what the average is. And that builds what I believe loyalty. People want to work for companies that believe in them and value them. And women are really big on that. I feel like we're really big. We want to be valued at work. And so when I see companies that are valuing their employees, having flexibility, and also having transparent communication, that I do believe is going to breed a lot of success in employment and entrepreneurship. Any comments?
I meant to say this was my last topic for the group, and then we're going to open it up if anyone in the audience has questions. So get your questions ready as we hear from the next panelists.
So I'll answer first on the organizing side. There are really basic interventions like having childcare at your meetings, again, making sure that the timing works. I also think that we need changes like voting should happen on a national holiday so everyone can go, no matter where you work. On a personal note, I just want to give a shout out to all the amazing male partners and dads out there. My partner, Michael, who I have infinite gratitude for, it would not have been possible to have been on the Harris campaign without him. Full stop. I was barely able to shower or put a sandwich together. His 3 girls are very lucky to be growing up with a man who doesn't think twice about sharing equally in all household labor, if not even more. And it just it's not a question. But so on a structural level, the work to support female founders and structure entrepreneurship support and finance is really interesting. I was just learning from my colleague Maggie about how a lot of startup accelerators were found to harm women. Actually, their results were worse after participating in these programs, and so that prompted years of work to redesign this support, and having female-only cohorts was a really important intervention. The goal actually not being just female-led teams. Gender-diverse teams perform better than women-only or male-only teams. But female cohorts were really important to attract women who didn't know that their startups were actually further along than they thought they were, and that they were ready for a level of investment. And that they might be entrepreneurs at all, right? To even step into that identity. Because a lot of women also struggle to find co-founders. Business schools have much lower rates of participation among women. The timing of women's most fertile years happens to not coincide very well with starting companies. And so an example of this intervention really working is one of our grantees, Vilgrow Africa, which helps healthcare startups across the continent. They, even after trying to intentionally recruit female founders, found that they weren't coming to their programs, and so they launched a female-only program, and that really helped attract women. And so the last thing that I think needs to happen is structural change, right? Like, we can forget that it was only 74 that women in the United States could apply for credit or get a mortgage. And that in many parts of the world, let's just talk about Africa, a lot of women can't be landholders. And if you can't be a landholder, then you might require a male to co-sign a loan. And so you can't access finance. And despite this, women are totally kicking ass. Somehow, in Kenya, over 40% of all small and medium enterprises are owned by women. The number is lower in the US, 46, but again, receiving less than 3% of venture capital. So just imagine what would be possible if in this entirely, male-dominated industry that is the most wasteful sector of our economy, throwing money after stupid ideas on purpose, knowing that these things are gonna fail, right? Wonder what we would see happen if we invested in women who, again, are under-promising and over-delivering.
Amazing. I love it. Camila, you're just reminding me of what happened maybe just 2 weeks ago. My mom lives in India, and we have 3 daughters, and I think she cried the day I was born because I'm the last daughter, because it wasn't a son. I give her grief about it even today, because her daughters have been, supporting her emotionally and financially for several years. And I put the down payment on an apartment in India, and the form asked me to put either my dad or husband's name in it, neither of whom are around in my life. So it just exists even today, and it exists in modern day world. But I wouldn't give that characterization with too much of a broad brush, because we're seeing women entrepreneurs, women leaders all over the world just being movers and shakers and making such a big impact and difference. I think there's so many great ideas that have already been shared. What I'll add is, we have seen that design needs to be considered, program design needs to be considering what creates change at an individual level. Research has pointed to women entrepreneurs benefiting from female mentors, but also male mentors. Being able to work with a different gender really allows them to think differently, explore ideas differently, challenge their assumptions differently. So it does require representation on both sides for us to have sort of a robust, thriving ecosystem that's working. Structurally, MicroMentor is a mentorship platform. We connect entrepreneurs with mentors, and while I can speak about mentorship very passionately, it can sit outside the system quite often. So part of our strategy and our design was, how do we embed mentorship as a systems change element? Where do people go right now for access to information? Is it through credits and loans? So we built a product called Mentorship as a Service. So it can be embedded into financial institutions, it can be embedded into government programs, such that it can sit alongside other interventions and not sitting outside as sort of a nice-to-have standalone component. So I think for folks doing this work, I think it's really important to think about how to be creating a systems-level change, in addition to looking at scale and impact and all of that. I think that's one very, very sort of important component, and the other piece, linking back to what I said about women not self-identifying as working on climate-facing solutions, the organizations that we partner with also need to be organizations that are not just labeled as a green organization. You know, they're working in food systems, they're working in waste reduction, they're working in other sectors where women are actively involved. And we know from the data that we see that women are more likely to use the information once they're given access to it. They have less access to information, but once the information is made available, they take more action. So back to what Sara said, you know, they just take more action, more change happens, and they create more jobs. So while we may feel something emotionally about, you know, male versus female, this is just what happens for many reasons. This sort of a gendered approach is very helpful to create jobs and create thriving economies. And you know, I'll add that. And I'm a mom of 2 daughters myself, and it's really, you know, important to see what world we can leave behind for.
Anita, you bring up such a good point around male allyship. And that's one thing I do think systemically we get to kind of address, which is male allyship. Some of my most favored mentors have been male mentors. And to be able to sponsor me and understand the difference between sponsorship and mentorship is really critical. We get to practice that as women, to practice sponsorship. Sponsorship and mentorship is something completely different within, you know, the different genders. Mentorship, you get to speak directly into someone's personal life and business life. Where a sponsor, you're only speaking to them about their professional life. You're not speaking to them about their personal life. And a sponsor is taking giving access to their network and putting you and saying, I'm giving credibility for this person. And we get to see that happen more with women. And I like practicing that personally at Women in Cleantech and Sustainability, of being a volunteer, active service for 15 years. I don't get paid to be on this board. I do it as a service for the community. How I earn my income is through my business at SmartWaste. So when I see this type of service more with women, of giving of their time and being generous with their time. And that's something that I think we get to see more in breaking some of these changes, that having men also be of service in that way, and sponsoring us to open up doors that we want open for us. And I am so direct with the men that are my mentors and my sponsors. And I say, I want $100 million and I want to sell my business for $100 million in 5 years. That's what I want. Will you help me do it? Yeah. And he's like, yes. So we get to be extremely direct. And that's the thing, too, that us as women get to practice that, as we saw the lady in the video, right? Like, I love that. So thank you so much for bringing up about the male allyship, because I think that's something we get to practice.
I didn't know that definition of sponsorship, but I love hearing it because I feel like it's both structural and it gives us all something we can do as individuals, right? We can all choose to be sponsors for other people, for people we see coming up, people who know they need the networks that we have. Love that. We're nearing time, but I do want to give a chance to have a couple of questions from the audience. And then we have the space. So after we get a couple audience questions, we will break up and you can get another drink and talk to the panelists in smaller groups as well. Okay, do I have some microphone runners? Great, I see a question right over there. Can you go to them, Quentin? Oh, and we have one ready right here. So we'll do down here and then up there.
Is this on? Oh, yeah. Hi. First off, I just want to say that it makes me giddy inside to see 4 women on a stage. I love the idea of disrupting the idea of a manel, like a panel full of men. And so my question is around mobilization and community building. And I feel like so much of the conversation regarding climate these days is around climate tech, like as if tech is just gonna save us all. And, but what seems to be missing from the conversation is the human connection, mobilizing, community building. And I'm curious, how can we shift the conversation to a more human-based, relationship-based, and community-based model and world?
Oh, good.
Just say that because I'm in the midst of strategic planning, and we had with our mentor a 2-hour conversation on how AI is going to, just rule the world, and what is going to be the role of human mentors and human connection. So you're touching on a sort of a hot button topic that's very relevant and top of mind for me right now, and at least at MicroMentor, because we're a tech forward solution. But at the heart of what we do is human connection, because we see that without, it's another person that can relate to you with empathy and kindness, even though ChatGPT seems to be a better therapist for me than my real one. You still have to speak to another person to really unlock the possibilities and the change and to understand how lonely it is to be an entrepreneur and how lonely it is to be trying to solve some of the pressing challenges. The element of human connection is going to be more important now than it has ever been. I think it's sort of how do we use technology to enable greater human connection is sort of becoming our mission, is how do we create more, whether it's local or global or virtual, but human connection really powering movements that have technology behind them is really at least at the heart of what we're thinking to design and evolve as the world is shifting around us. I mean, to put our head in the sand is not going to be possible, but if we have intention around it, I think that's when we sort of create those solutions.
You had asked really quickly how to mobilize, and I want to keep it really simple, which for me, an invitation really goes a long way. I think direct invitation, I think direct messaging, and directly talking, because I feel like after COVID, a lot of us have isolated ourselves, and we see this a lot with students. Even within the community, we think we're sending out messages and people are on social media, but maybe they missed it and they were busy. So I really think an invitation, and how many of you really want to go places when you're not invited? And it sounds like so much common sense, but sometimes we forget. We should probably just ask. So that's my simple thought.
Yeah, I love this question. Just as a logic chain, look at where we are now because of millions of people who didn't vote in November. Why did they not vote? So many people lack community. They don't think that they matter. They certainly don't think their vote is going to matter. And they're getting their information from bots on the internet run by right-wing religious zealots with a ton of money, fossil fuel companies, and others who want to see a corporate authoritarian state. This is not an accident that now Trump today issued a new plan of 90 policies to accelerate the build-out of artificial intelligence. And that would include further slashing of basically all of our environmental protections that he's already thrown out the window, and forcing data centers on states by shortcutting any kind of community input, environmental protections again. And so what world is that leading us to? Well, one where emissions are higher, much higher. 10% of current global emissions is expected to be added to global pollution because of AI-driven fossil fuel use. AI is in many ways just a fossil fuel subsidy in disguise, as this innovation that nobody, who's asking for this, right? Generative AI, which is driving electricity use through the roof, it's gonna go up 16% by 2035. That's nuts. And we don't have the power to fulfill it, right? Especially after he's axed the clean energy tax credits. Solar and wind are the cheapest forms and easiest forms of energy to build, even without subsidies. And so it's all like one system, right? And so I think, to get back to the answer, the basic human technologies are the ones that we need the most now. And that is talking to each other, gathering in circles, developing empathy, knowing how to listen, and how to show up consistently so that the trust between us grows instead of breaks.
Yeah.
Woo!
Gathering in person. Here we are. All right, I see some more questions out there. I know we have a question up here.
Hi, I'm Allie Burgos with.
Oh, a little closer, maybe.
Can you hear me now? Okay, I'm Allie Burgos with Oregon State University, and my question is how you deal with fatigue of continuing to be resilient. I'm an early career scientist in coastal resiliency, and my job, just along with the mental load of not even having kids, but 2 pets and a partner, is very tiring. And I feel really passionate about serving our coastal communities, but the future beyond what the current administration is doing is daunting. So how do you deal with this moving into your career of having all of these different inputs put onto you?
So I love my life, and I tell myself that often. I have to say that I am really big on compartmentalizing. I do a lot of that. I also take naps, quite candidly. So being resilient is something that I don't really know how to tell you how to teach that. Unfortunately, when you're brought up in a trauma-based world, you have to learn how to move forward. And for me, I'm just gonna say that you keep your eyes on the prize and invest in people. For me, I get energy from 2 ways, which is being in a room like this of thought leaders and making new friends. And then I also take time to be with nature. I also really much love being in water. So any opportunity that you find that you're feeling depleted, I do think that the answers are around us, which is usually outside. The resilience comes by building relationships with people that are gonna fill your cup when you're feeling drained. And I would say that you find yourself in a community like Women in Cleantech and Sustainability, because I would have never thought 14 years ago that I would still be volunteering for a community at will and making some of the most amazing connections. So because of the connections that I've made, I've been able to endure a lot of things in work, in a male-populated industry. I don't say male-dominated because that's a choice. And so, so I say if there's more men, it's because they're more populated in that space. So, and 2, it's about the vernacular. So for me, I would just say, find something that is able to give you more energy. And for me, it was nature. And for me, it was definitely Women in Cleantech and Sustainability. It bred just some amazing friends that I've been friends with now for over a decade. So it's very helpful.
Yeah, great answer.
I do have something to say about this. I think much like everybody in this room, when the election results came, it was a deeply sort of crushing, devastating moment for those of us that, it isn't about, whether it was Kamala Harris or someone else. It's just what that moment represented was very, very disturbing. And going back to mentors, one of my mentors recently did her PhD thesis in resilience in sort of biodiversity, and people that have been working on that for decades. They've been working on that for decades. And she also practices mindfulness. She was the ED of the Garrison Institute. If anyone is familiar with that, it's a lot to do with, sort of Buddhist philosophy and mindfulness. So what I learned from that conversation that she hosted was sharing some of her PhD research, but it is, the answer I'm going to give you might feel a little bit out there, but comes back to our sense of attachment. How much we are attached. Like, yes, so things can go down like complete shithole in the next few years. And this planet might be destroyed. And so what? I mean, we've done that. Like, we are doing that actively. As a human race, we're doing that. So there is a sense of attachment. And also, to what Sara is saying, is how much of your energy do you want to spend being in agony and resisting and being attached, and how much do you want to spend in sort of restoration and rejuvenation? And the research from sort of the biodiversity research and people that have been climate activists for decades was you spend 80% of your time focused on, sort of self and relationships and the things that rejuvenate you, and you spend 20% of your time in sort of like that, the movement out there that zaps you of all of that, because that's what our system is set up for. It's set up to drain those of us that are invested in this to be down on our knees. But, I think if we can flip that narrative and really invest in ourselves 80% of the time and really focus on 20%, I think that it was a very enlightening conversation for me to be part of and hear, and it certainly gives me a lot of fuel in my tank to keep doing this work. I mean, I expect to do it for the rest of my life.
I'll keep this very brief. I just want to really underscore what Anita says, because probably the single greatest investment I've made in my own resilience was a month-long meditation retreat that I went on. Yeah, this is awesome. And just to really go inward in a structured way in a tradition that has lasted millennia. Humans have found ways to cope with extreme loss, and we are in a period of extreme loss also. Some of this stuff is universal and timeless, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can lean on those traditions, and it's such a worthwhile investment to really look attachment in the eye through a practice of being with your body and noticing change moment to moment. Who was it? Was it Bell Hooks or Olivia Butler who said change is God, or God is change? Excuse me. I think it was in Parable of the Sower. And so if we can accept that change is the only constant and embrace the joy and the life that is here because we have space for it, rather than being attached to what is not going well and what has been lost, which is really attachment to the past, or fretting about the future, which we are also not living yet. We will never really live in the future. We only live here right now. That practice is revolutionary, worthwhile.
Thank you for that question. I think we all needed that wisdom. We can take one more question. We have it right here in front, and then we'll break to convene on the floor.
Thank you. And to the previous question asker, I have had a recent breakthrough in this category, and if you're up for a chat and you can see me from here, I'd love to talk to you after. Okay, so just so you understand where I'm coming from, I work in construction for public infrastructure and transit projects, and we put together these super teams, and there's opportunities to bring new firms into the fold for workforce development and lots of these types of initiatives. Countless studies have shown that teams and services perform better with diverse teams. Regardless of that proof, it doesn't seem to make much of a difference in convincing people that these programs are worthwhile. And now we face new policy limitations and threats to funding. So my question is, do you have any tips or personal experiences with
gaining stakeholder buy-in, specifically financial stakeholders, while being able to protect the intention of your programs. So you're not having to say, oh, now our program is open to everyone and we can no longer serve who we're here to serve. So hopefully that question makes sense.
So, you're talking about infrastructure projects in what sector again? In the construction space. So if I'm following the question correctly, do you mind asking it in maybe a different way for us to follow?
Sure, yeah. So my question is just, do you have tips for establishing stakeholder buy-in for programs that focus on supporting minority communities in your industries?
So I work in the public sector in the waste and recycling industry. At SmartWaste, we work with school districts and municipalities. I'll speak to working with 30,000 souls, okay? There's, when we're working with stakeholders and 30,000 souls, we're talking about 30,000 students in Southern California. The demographic is a rural demographic, so there's mixed demographic there of like ranches, so it could be a little bit more rural there. So when we're talking about stakeholders, I talk about the general fund a lot. The reason being is because the general fund, it's public information. So when we're talking about public information, this is public access. So when we're talking about public contracts, for me, I think about how we're going to implement cost savings and infrastructure in a waste system, and I'm talking to either the superintendents as well as I'm getting the buy-in to the parents in that community. When we talk about implementation of waste systems, and maybe that there was a need for money to implement that, we talk about maybe how in the future they can advocate for bonds. Right? Because we understand that if a school district were to get maybe like a $5 million bond, they'll have some more money, but it does take community action to do so. What happens is now at SmartWaste, we're considered a community partner at that point for the bond. But then we're also able to implement direct implementation of cost savings to their general fund through our programs. So then now we're talking to the superintendent, now we're getting the education department involved, and now we're getting the stakeholders of the maintenance operations, transportation directors, but then the students hear about recycling, and then now we got that stakeholder. So when we talk about that, we have to think about all levels. And we take this bird's eye view, right? So for me, when I think about infrastructure, I take this real extreme look back, as far back as I can. And in your situation, you have multiple stakeholders, but I would only narrow it down to 5, okay? And those 5 stakeholders in my situation are the administration, the students, the custodial staff, the teachers, supervisors, and the food service team. I'm winning the hearts of all those 5 stakeholders, but I'm leveraging all levels. And I'm leveraging my relationship with the superintendent, but I'm letting them know that I'm telling all 30,000 souls and all 30,000 parents about the program and the benefits of the program and the value that it's going to bring to the community. I hope those tips are extremely helpful. And if they're not, we'll talk more later.
I think we've gotten into sector specifics. It's the perfect time to break into small groups. We do want to take a minute to share, before we wrap things completely, just to share about women in clean tech and sustainability and green empowerment and how you can get more involved if you want to. So, slight call to action. If you are feeling inspired and you want to get involved with green empowerment, there are several ways you can do that. We have wait lists of communities. Our partners have wait lists of communities who are waiting to do projects, who want to build water systems, who want to build energy systems. And we are always looking for funding. Something you can always do is join our mailing list to learn more and become a donor, become a supporter of green empowerment. If you are feeling inspired tonight, there's the QR code right there. Also, it is Climate Week. We know that there's a lot of people representing companies at these events. We want to mention that we're always looking for more places to screen this film. We'd love to screen this film with any community that you're part of, your company, your church group, your community center, anywhere where you think you could draw a crowd that would be interested. So talk to us if you're interested in that. And we also partner with companies to do Adopt a Project, where you actually get to have the opportunity to finance a whole project and work directly with a partner with a community to see that project come to fruition. So those are some opportunities to get involved with green empowerment.
So Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability, as I mentioned, we're a nonprofit organization. We're always looking for new members. So if you just want to be a part of a network and build your network, you can become a member. If you have some time and you want to volunteer and either do an event or participate in our mentorship program and become a mentor, that's another way. And we also have an entrepreneurship program where we're supporting entrepreneurs through multiple ways of career development, access to some of the labs that you had mentioned earlier, such as Elemental Lab, Virtue Labs, things like this. You can check out our website, and I think we have a QR code too. Maybe did we share one? There's probably one that's going to flow up on the screen shortly. But most importantly, I would say stay connected with us on our newsletter. We have virtual events. We want to build a community here in Portland, and we're looking for leaders. We're looking for thought leaders. We're looking for community leaders that want to start a chapter in this region. So if that's something that you're interested in, whether it's just socially or a little bit more formal, please talk to me after. And like I mentioned, we're always looking for activities that we can do within our regions with our members, climate active things that we want to make an impact. If you have any ideas for future events too as well, we're always interested in those things as well. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much to the Mission Theater. They've been awesome to work with. Thank you to Chase Petrie, who's on Green Empowerment staff and has done a lot of the behind the scenes tonight and to get this event ready. And thank you to all our volunteers tonight. And huge thank you to this awesome panel. Let's give it up. Thank you so much for coming and engaging. We have the space. If you want to get another drink and stay and chat, please do.